Rhea Carter never imagined that after surviving 2 tours on Mars, what would truly test her patience wasn't war, it was sharing a tiny metal cube of living space with a lizard the size of a refrigerator. Picross species. Integration program. Was still new, a carefully balanced experiment between the United Terran Republic and the Laxian Accord, designed to build military camaraderie and prevent further interstellar misunderstandings. The higher-ups believed that throwing humans and aliens into shared quarters would promote empathy and understanding. Rhea wasn't so sure that her new roommate, Kaiservel of the Yulaxian Shock Infantry, had arrived with a datapad full of protocols, an interpreter drone that translated his clicking sign language, and zero concept of boundaries. He was tall, scaled, and built like an armored beast, 2 upper arms, 2 lower arms, and a face that resembled a crocodile fused with a ceremonial mask. Despite his intimidating appearance, Kaiser was polite and inquisitive, always watching Rhea with what she assumed was curiosity. Still, curiosity didn't mean compatibility. Kaiser liked to stand silently for long periods, observing everything from her cooking techniques to how she brushed her hair. He didn't understand sarcasm, found chairs confusing, and had once tried to wash his armor in the kitchen sink. Rhea had survived a lot in her military career, but living with an alien who thought refrigerators were storage for ceremonial eggs was pushing it. It all came to a head one early morning. Rhea had returned late from a patrol shift, her nerves frayed and muscles aching. She stepped into the cramped shower, blasted some music through her datapad, and let the hot water drown out the stress. The door to her room, her private side of the quarters, was closed but not locked. In her exhaustion, she didn't even grab a towel on her way out of the stall. The song blaring in the background was a pulsing pop anthem, catchy and rhythmic, something her younger sister had sent her. Rhea hummed along, walked out, and froze. Kaiser was in the room, standing there, just there. He was mid-sentence, his 4 arms gesturing in quick Yulaxian sign while his translator droned, and as per the meal rotation schedule, I have questions about. Then he saw her. Rhea's heart nearly stopped. She stood completely naked, eyes wide, hand reaching for a towel that wasn't there. Kaiser's entire posture changed, his tail stiffened. His body locked into place, and then, slowly, his grayish scales shimmered into a vibrant electric blue. She screamed. He blinked. Then, as if analyzing the moment, he cocked his head and made a series of clicking sounds that were oddly calm for someone who had just barged in on a naked roommate. Rhea lunged for the towel, wrapped it around herself in record time, and shoved him out of the room. Door. Knock? You knock? What the hell, Kaiser? He stood outside her door, unmoving, his translator buzzing softly. I apologize. I did not understand. The closed door indicated ritual privacy. The music suggested welcome. The exposure suggested trust. What? No, that's shower music. It's not a mating call. She shouted through the door. There was a long silence. Then the translator added, double quotes, ... clarifying definition of mating call. She groaned and buried her face in the towel. Later, as she cooled off, Rhea realized how deep the misunderstanding ran. Laxians didn't cover their bodies the way humans did. Clothing was ceremonial for them, not modest. Nudity didn't exist in their language. Exposed skin, particularly after bathing, was seen as a gesture of openness, a prelude to bonding. The music didn't help. Rhythmic, emotionally expressive tones were part of their courting rituals. To Kaiser, Rhea hadn't made a mistake. She'd sent signals, powerful ones, and that color shift, vibrant blue, wasn't just a blush. It was biological evidence of emotional imprinting, a phenomenon the Yulaxians considered sacred. The next morning, Kaiser avoided eye contact. His scales remained faintly blue, and he spent most of the day in what looked like silent contemplation. Rhea tried to push the event out of her mind, but the awkwardness lingered. Not just between them, but in her inbox, where a message from her commanding officer awaited. Subject: urgent cultural incident involving Elaxian roommate. She sighed, rubbed her temples, and muttered to herself, "All because I forgot the damn towel." But deep down, Rhea knew this wasn't over. Corporal Rhea Carter thought the morning after the incident couldn't possibly get worse. But that was before 3 different alien delegates, a half-panicked human colonel, and one extremely flustered diplomatic interpreter summoned her to an emergency meeting. At first, she assumed it was just disciplinary action, maybe a warning about protocol violations, maybe a slap on the wrist for lack of cultural sensitivity. But when she arrived, she noticed something different. The Elaxian ambassador, Ambassador Threxvel, a dignified elder with dark gold scales and ceremonial horns, looked almost giddy, like he was about to preside over a wedding. And that's when things began to unravel. One of the humans handed her a datapad. Kaiser had submitted an official report. The translated title read, "Initiation of Bonding Protocol between myself and the human designated Rhea Carter following mutual trust exchange rituals." She blinked at it. "What the hell does that mean?" The interpreter coughed. "In Elaxian custom, it's essentially the start of an official mating proposal." "What?" Apparently, to the Elaxians, her nudity, combined with the playing of rhythmic emotive sound and a lack of visible threat response, indicated clear signs of a mutual courtship ritual. Kaiser had not only misread her behavior, he had sent a message to his military hierarchy that a successful bonding trigger had occurred. Worse still, he hadn't done this maliciously. His intentions were completely respectful by his culture's standards. He was simply following protocol for what he believed was the beginning of a shared life. Now, Elaxian Central Command had begun preparing cultural integration files, DNA compatibility analysis, and even proposed diplomatic benefits, stemming from a historic interspecies bond. Kaiser had, in their eyes, honored her by taking the step. She felt like crawling under a table. The human military was in damage control mode. Earth's representatives tried to explain that humans had wildly different concepts of privacy, nudity, and emotional bonding. That no offense was meant, and that Rhea had not initiated any courtship, but things got more complicated when a third-party species, the politically opportunistic Jurati collective, caught wind of the incident. To the Jurati, Laxians bonding with humans signaled a new strategic alliance, a threat. The Jurati had always walked a diplomatic tightrope between Earth and the Elaxians. If a courtship like this went forward and was ratified publicly, it would appear as though Earth was choosing sides. Suddenly, a single awkward moment between 2 roommates had galactic consequences. A Elaxian bonding was not a private matter. It was sacred, legally binding, and involved rituals that were recognized interplanetarily. Kaiser's report had been entered into military and spiritual record. If Rhea publicly denied it, the Elaxians wouldn't retaliate, but they'd be deeply insulted. And insults like that had a way of spreading among honor-bound warrior species. Meanwhile, Earth's top diplomats were trying to figure out how to spin the event as a symbol of cooperation, rather than a personal accident involving steam soap and a broken lock. One delegate even proposed leaning into the narrative, making Rhea a bridge between species. Using her story to normalize human-Elaxian trust, Rhea nearly flipped the table. To her, it was all a ridiculous misunderstanding. But to the galaxy, this was romance, diplomacy, and warfare prevention all wrapped in one. Kaiser, when brought into the meeting, stood with a quiet dignity. His scales had dulled slightly, a sign of stress or confusion. He bowed, using all four arms in a formal Eulaxian gesture of apology. "I did not mean to shame the bond," he signed. "If I was wrong, I withdraw the claim." For a moment, the room was silent. That humility hit Rhea harder than expected. Kaiser had been nothing but respectful, even in the face of rejection. He hadn't pressed, hadn't accused, hadn't made things more complicated than they already were. He had simply followed his culture's signals, and when confronted, he stepped back. "I'm not angry with you," she said quietly. "It was a misunderstanding, but I didn't realize how big it was, or how much it meant." He blinked, uncertain. Ambassador Threxfell leaned forward. "Human Carter, we do not demand you accept the bond, but understand what you do next will echo across 3 planets. Be cautious in how you dismiss something sacred." Rhea sighed. Corporal Rhea Carter had always considered herself a practical woman, trained, disciplined, fluent in 5 military protocols and 3 weapon systems. But now she found herself up against something far more complex than any battlefield she'd faced: Laxian romance law, after the incident when her alien roommate, Kaiser, accidentally walked in on her naked and misinterpreted the situation as a declaration of mating. Rhea had spent days trying to untangle herself from the consequences. She thought an apology and clarification would do the trick. It didn't. What followed instead was a tidal wave of cultural expectations, diplomatic interpretation, and now interstellar bureaucracy. She tried everything in the human playbook to correct the situation. First, she submitted a formal denial to the United Terran Embassy, stating there was no romantic intent behind her actions and requesting an official correction to be passed to the Laxians. The Eulaxians responded with a ritual poem. Translated, it read, "When the fire of union is denied, it does not burn out, it smolders, sacred, until honored." Great. They thought her refusal was part of the bonding process. A test of commitment. Next, Rhea tried to go full diplomatic. She created a presentation for the Eulaxian delegation outlining the Terran concept of accidental exposure, complete with a slideshow, what nudity means on Earth. It included images of humans on beaches and locker rooms and undergoing medical exams, all non-romantic situations. Instead of helping, it sparked interest. Laxian scholars declared Earth's approach to nudity exhilaratingly chaotic, and rumors began spreading that humans might be a more open, passionate species than previously believed. Some even started calling her the uncloaked flame. The final straw came when the Jurati, already agitated by the budding Eulaxian Terran closeness, filed a formal complaint at the Galactic Council, accusing Earth of covert political seduction. Rhea had unintentionally become the face of an interstellar scandal, all because she forgot a towel. Meanwhile, Kaiser had retreated into a kind of quiet mourning. He still attended his training sessions, still performed his duties, but he moved with slower precision. The bright blue of his bonded state had faded into a muted silver, a color of sorrow among his people. He no longer spoke unless spoken to. He stopped practicing human words. He avoided eye contact. Rhea noticed it gnawed at her. The idea that she had heard him, not physically, but in a way that mattered deeply to his culture. He'd done nothing wrong. He'd followed what he thought were the signs. And when told he was mistaken, he didn't get angry. He didn't demand, he just grieved. One night, she found him sitting silently in the observation lounge, watching the stars. A tray of untouched food sat beside him. The lights reflected softly against his scales, and for the first time, she didn't see an alien. She saw a person. She sat next to him. He glanced at her, then looked away. "I'm sorry," she said, "for how I reacted. I didn't mean to embarrass you. or hurt you. Kaiser made a low rumble in his throat. You were not wrong, his translator buzzed. I assumed. I acted with pride. That is my shame. She shook her head. It wasn't pride. You were honest, respectful. You didn't try to force anything. That's more than I can say for a lot of humans I've known. Kaiser turned to her fully, his gaze deep and unreadable. Then why withdraw? Rhea hesitated. I panicked. I thought everyone would laugh, or that the galaxy would treat me like some kind of symbol. I didn't want to be a headline. Kaiser clicked softly, a sound of understanding. I did not wish for headlines. I wished for you to see me, as I saw you, brave, strong, full of storm. Rhea smiled faintly. You saw all that in 5 seconds? He tilted his head. I am trained to read weakness in enemies, but in you, I saw no fear, only fire. That caught her off guard. No one had ever said something like that to her. Not like that. Not without games or flirtation or expectations. Just truth. Maybe it was the silence of the stars. Maybe it was the way he spoke so steady, so sincere. But in that moment, Rhea realized that for all her attempts to run from the situation, the person at the center of it had never tried to own her. He had simply waited. He hadn't pushed. He'd respected every boundary she gave, and he was still here. For all the chaos the bonding misunderstanding had caused, Corporal Rhea Carter had almost found a kind of uneasy peace with it. Diplomatic tension still simmered. Memes about the uncloaked flame still circulated the Tyrannet and Ylaxian. Poets were still composing embarrassing sonnets about her storm-born soul. But at least things with Kaiser had become stable. Not romantic, not resolved, but stable. That stability was shattered the moment they were both assigned to an interplanetary delegation mission to Gliese 7, a neutral world at the edge of contested space between the United Terran Republic, the Ylaxian Accord, and the opportunistic Jurati Collective. The mission was simple in theory. Joint representation of peace and unity at a planetary summit hosted by the Glisari Council, meant to reduce tensions and prevent militarization of the system. Earth and Yalax had chosen Rhea and Kaiser as liaisons not because of their diplomatic skills, but because they were now the symbol of cross-species cooperation. Walk in, smile, wave, don't start a war, Rhea muttered as she stepped off the shuttle. GLIESE-VI, I was beautiful skies tinted violet, architecture sculpted from living stone, air full of soft, chime-like winds. But beneath the serenity, there was tension. Security was tight. Jurati delegates avoided her. Laxian warriors stood in rigid formation, and Rhea couldn't shake the feeling that she and Kaiser were being watched. For most of the visit, they kept to their roles. Rhea translated Terran greetings, demonstrated harmless human tech, and answered questions about Earth culture. Kaiser stood at her side, tall and silent, drawing attention with his imposing form, but not engaging unless spoken to. Every now and then, she'd catch him looking at her. Not long, just a glance, but it always carried quiet intensity. Then came the ambush. It happened in the lower plaza during a diplomatic tour. The delegation had just finished viewing Glisari Harmonic Gardens when explosions ripped through the square. A Jurati extremist cell, anti-human and furious about the Ylaxian-Terran bond, had infiltrated the city. Their goal was simple: assassinate the symbols of unity. The crowd scattered. Screams erupted. Plasma bolts tore through the air. Rhea was shoved hard by a blast wave, hurled against a wall. She hit the stone with a grunt, rolled, and tried to get up, but her leg wouldn't move. Blood oozed down her thigh. Her pistol was gone. Her earpiece was fried. Her vision blurred, and then they came. 3 Jurati insurgents armored in black, moving fast, weapons raised. Eyes locked on her. She thought, This is it. But then came the roar.k single quote ZAR. He charged out of the smoke like a meteor, his scales flaring a furious red, the Elaxian color of wrath. He slammed into the first attacker, with all four arms, crushing their weapon arm before hurling them across the plaza. The second went down with a bone-snapping impact as K.'s lower fists shattered their mask and drove them into the pavement. The third fired a bolt at Rhea. Kaiser dove. The plasma hit his shoulder. He grunted in pain but stayed upright. He didn't slow down. He stood over Rhea, shielded her with his entire body, and let out a guttural snarl that echoed through the plaza. Backup arrived minutes later. Too late. Kaiser had already saved her. When the medics arrived, Rhea was still on the ground, barely conscious. Kaiser knelt beside her, panting, wounded. He ignored his own injuries. He touched his forehead to hers, a sacred gesture in his culture. "You are safe," he signed. "That is all." Those words stayed with her even as the medics loaded them onto stretchers. In the infirmary later, bruised and stitched up, Rhea reviewed security footage of the attack. She watched Kaiser dive through gunfire, break enemy lines, and shield her without hesitation. And then, quietly, she asked a question she never thought she would. "Why would you do all that for me?" Kaiser, now bandaged and resting beside her, turned his head slowly. "I was trained to protect allies," he signed. "But I fought like that because I chose you. I still do." She stared at him. There was no pressure in his voice. No demand, no guilt, just truth. Something shifted inside her. The aftermath of the Gliese 7 ambush rippled far beyond the violet skies of that fractured world. By the time Corporal Rhea Carter was cleared from the medical ward, 3 planets were watching her every move. Security footage of Kaiser shielding her had gone viral. In a matter of hours, he had become a symbol of alien loyalty, of unity between predator and prey, soldier and soldier, alien and human. What began as a diplomatic experiment had now become the beating heart of interspecies relations. But Rhea wasn't thinking about politics when she finally stood again. She was thinking about what it meant to be seen the way Kaiser saw her, not as an emblem, not as a headline, as her flawed, furious, and capable, and he had chosen her. When the official invitation came, a summons to the tri-species conclave being held in Earth's lunar embassy, Rhea knew what it meant. She was expected to make a statement, something that could ease tension between the Terrans, the Elaxians, and the hostile Jurati, who were now backing away in embarrassment after their extremists failed in Gliese 7. The Elaxian delegation had already arrived, including Ambassador Threx Val. Kaiser was there too, dressed in ceremonial armor. His scales still bore the scar of the plasma bolt that had struck him. He hadn't let the healers smooth it over. It remained, gleaming like a war medal across his chest. The Terran ambassador approached Rhea before she entered the chamber. "No pressure," he said dryly. "But whatever you say in the next 10 minutes will determine whether 3 civilizations lean toward war or peace." She smirked. "Good thing I'm better at improvising." The chamber was packed. Glizari observers hovered on platforms. Terran and Elaxian military personnel stood in full dress. Even the Jurati, though silent, were present, watching from the shadows, and all eyes turned to Rhea. She stood in the center, alone, no script, no advisors. Just her. And Kaiser, standing a few meters away, waiting. She took a breath. "I didn't mean to start anything," she began. "Not when my alien roommate walked in on me without knocking. Not when I screamed loud enough to rattle the walls. And definitely not when I accidentally caused a diplomatic crisis because of a towel." Laughter rippled through the room, some surprised, some genuine. "But that moment, ridiculous as it was, taught me something," she continued. They taught me how fragile communication is between species, how easy it is to misread intentions, how what looks like embarrassment to one side can mean sacred bonding to another. She looked at Kaiser. I tried to deny it, to laugh it off, to run from what it meant. But every time, Kaiser showed me the same thing: honor, respect, patience. Not once did he use misunderstanding to pressure me. Not once did he assume. My silence meant acceptance. She took a step forward. He waited. And when danger came, he didn't hesitate. Not for politics. Not for species. He protected me because he chose to, because he meant what he said every time. Silence filled the chamber. Then, softly, Rhea said, "So here's my answer." She stepped up beside Kzar. In Eulaxian terms, I acknowledge the bond. I don't fully understand it, and I may never see the world the way he does. But I'm willing to learn, to walk forward together, not as tools of diplomacy, but as people. Kaiser blinked. His translator clicked softly, interpreting his sign. "Then I will walk with you until your stars fade." That phrase, the traditional Elaxian vow, made the entire chamber stir. Ambassador. Threxvel bowed. The Terran side didn't applaud, not yet. But they stood a little straighter. The Jurati delegates, once ready to walk out, sent a single note to the council. Tensions reduced. Observation continues. In the days that followed, the galaxy changed just a little. Gliese 7 summit resulted in the Unified Frontier Pact, a rare three-party agreement. Laxian schools began studying human cultural nuance and Terran. Children started asking their parents what it meant to walk with someone until their stars fade. As for Rhea and Kaiser, they remained roommates. Sort of. Their quarters were expanded. They trained together, ate together, argued over whether soup counted as a beverage. And sometimes, rarely, Rhea would catch him watching her again, not with confusion or expectation, but with that quiet, reverent focus she had come to understand. And once, as she reached for a cup of tea and their hands touched, she asked without looking up, "Still awkward for 3 planets?" Kaiser made a soft clicking laugh. "No." He signed. "Now they are just jealous.